Welcome back. Let's go ahead and get it started with example 3. So we are going to solve the formula D equals R times T for T. Then we're going to find the time in hours that it would take for Van Dyke to travel 26.2 miles if his average speed was 18 miles per hour. And then we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so there's quite a few steps here. So it says solve the formula D equals R times T, distance equals rate times time for T. Okay, that's going to be the first step. And then the second step is to find the time in hours that it would take Van Dyke to travel 26.2 miles. That's going to be our distance. If his average speed was 18 miles per hour. And then round to the nearest hundredth. We need to remember that. It's always important to leave your answer how the problem asks you to leave it. Okay, so the first part of that is going to be, let's rewrite this equation, D equals R times T, or RT is the same thing as R times T, okay? We're going to solve this for T, so we need to isolate that variable, okay? And then we're just going to use inverse operations to get that variable by itself. So right now, the only thing that's around T is this R. It's related to T through multiplication, so we're going to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which would be division. We're going to divide by R to both sides. We get D over R equals T, and then we're going to use that symmetric property of equality to get that variable that we want on the left side of the equation. Okay, so that's what we end up with. There is our equation. So I'm going to take that and write it up here. So we have T equals D over R. And then they give us, okay, this is the first part. Now we're on to the second part. Okay, it says find the time in hours. And it's nice because our equation is now solved for time, so it's going to give us the answer directly. Find the time in hours that it would take Van Dyke to travel 26.2 miles. So that's what D equals. I'm going to define my variables. D equals 26.2. If his average speed was 18 miles per hour, that's the rate. The rate is the average speed. So R equals 18. Now we substitute those values into our literal equation, or a formula here. And we get T equals 26.2. That's what D equals, all over our rate, which is 18. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go off to the side. I'm going to do this long division problem right here, 26.2 divided by 18. So right here, 26.2 divided by 18. Does 18 go into 2? Nope. Does 18 go into 26? Yep. How many times? One time. 1 times 18 is 18. We subtract. And the 6 is not big enough, so we have to borrow from this 2. Borrow 1, making that a 1. And then now we have 16 minus 8, which is 8, and 1 minus 1, which is 0. And then we're going to put this decimal right up here. We're going to drop down this 2 here. And now we have trying to figure out how many times 18 goes into 82. Well, to figure that out, I'm going to think about 18, and I'm going to round it to 20, because it's kind of easier to think about 20, and 18 is really close to 20. How many times does 20 go into 82? Well, 20 would go into 84 times. So I'm going to try that, 4. 4, and then we multiply. 4 times 8 is 32. Write the 2, carry the 3. That's a 3. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. And then we subtract. We get 0, 1, and then we have a remainder, so we need to keep going. We're going to drop down that 0. And then we're going to say, okay, how many times does 18 go into 100? And again, I'm going to think about 18 like it's 20. 20 goes into 100 5 times. So I'm going to write 5. 5 times 8 is 40. We multiply 0 there. This is going to be a 4. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 4 is 9. And what do we get? 0 and 1 again, and then we're going to drop this down, and it's going to be a remainder, and then it looks like this is going to be repeating. right? How many times does 18 go to 100? 18 is close to 20. We're going to say, oh, it goes in 5 times. And then 5 times 8, 18 is going to be 90 again. And then we have the same thing, 10, and then we keep, you know. So this is actually going to end up repeating. So we would write our answer. If it was repeating, we'd put that little symbol right there. But what they want to know is they want us to round to the nearest hundredth. So here we go. This is the tenths place. This is the hundredths place. So whenever you're rounding from the hundredths, you got to go to the next one. Now, is this a 5 or more? It is. It's a 5. So that means we're going to round this up to a 6. So that means our answer for time is going to be 1.46. Are we talking about hours? Yep, 1.46 hours. That is going to be the time. All right, there you go. Okay, let's go on to the next problem, B, and work that one out. B says that the formula C equals 2 pi r relates to the circumference C of a circle. The circumference, you remember, if we have a circle, the circumference is, if we start here, it's the distance all the way around the circle. That's what the circumference is. Sometimes I like to say, hey, circumference is just the same thing as the perimeter. It's the distance all the way around that figure. But for circles, they give it a special name called circumference. So the formula C equals 2 pi r relates to the circumference C of a circle to its radius r. And a radius is just something from the center of the circle to the outside. That's what a radius is. It says solve C equals 2 pi r for r. And then it says if a circle's circumference is 15 inches, what is the radius? And then lastly, leave the symbol pi in your answer. Okay, cool. So this, like the other one, it has some things it wants us to do, right? So the first thing it wants us to do is to solve C equals 2 pi r, that formula, and they want us to solve it for r. That's the first step. Then the second step says if a circle's circumference is, so that means that the circumference is just means equals 15 inches. What is the radius? So it wants us to determine what the radius is. And then lastly, it wants us to leave the symbol pi in our answer. So leave the symbol pi in our answer. So we just have to remember how they want us to write that answer. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing, C equals 2 pi r. I'm going to rewrite that. C equals 2 pi r. And we're going to solve it for r. That means we're going to get r by itself. Okay. So what's around r? Well, we have 2 pi. And how is that related to r? Through multiplication. So we're going to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which would be division. We're going to divide both sides by 2 pi here. So what we end up with is C over 2 pi. 2 pi divided by 2 pi is just 1. 1 times r is r. So now we have r by itself, but I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this so r is on the left side. Okay. So that is the first part right there. And then the second part, they want us to use this formula, r equals C over 2 pi. And it says if a circle's circumference is 15 inches, so that means C equals 15. What is the radius? So we're just going to substitute 15 in there. And we get r equals 15 over 2 pi. And then, you know, they want us to leave it in terms of pi. So, I mean, I would be okay with leaving it like this. Or, I mean, if you wanted to change it to a decimal, 15 divided by 2, half of 15 would be 7.5. So you could say that, or r is equal to 7.5 over pi. And leave the symbol pi in your answer. So either one of those would work. All right. Okay, that's it for example 3. We will see you in a little bit for example 4.